Brace yourselves for the Middle-Aged Fat Lasses podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Middle-Aged Fat Lasses podcast with Cecil and Simons, the two Sarahs.
Hello, how are you?
I'm trying to get my energy up because this week we are talking about exercise.
Oh, exercise. You and me are quite similar with exercise. We have quite a broad experience of a range of different disciplines.
Yeah.
None of which we've excelled at. Some of them we have excelled at, but only possibly very briefly. Oh, I don't know. Am I doing us down? I'm stereotyping us.
Well, you're a brilliant swimmer and you do massive long distances, don't you? And I go through phases of doing great big long distance walking and then I sit still for 7 years.
Yeah, didn't you walk across the Sahara?
I walked across a bit of the Sahara and it was 110 miles over 5 days of the Sahara. It was still quite a trot.
And didn't you have the wrong boots on?
Oh, for God's sake. Oh. Right, I'll tell you what happened. We're leaping straight in, then we'll backtrack. 40th birthday, I wanted to do something extreme because I thought if I have a party, I'll just be really pissed off that I'm not sat at home with my mates having a laugh. You know, I couldn't afford to go on holiday. And so I thought, right, I'll do something extreme. So I was working with a charity and I thought I'll do a Sahara trek because that seemed like the most extreme thing I could possibly do. And I paid for it myself. It wasn't one of those where you're asking for lots of money and then it turns out Marjorie down the road spent 20 quid to get you bumped up into first class. Want one of those. I knew it was going to be hard and I did loads of training. Got my walking boots and they were nipping a bit, but I didn't know if that was right or not. So I took them back to the shop. They went, no, it's fine, we'll stretch them for you. So they did. Anyway, so with these sort of adventures, generally you don't know anybody. Your first meeting is at the airport. And that you're going to spend like a week, 10 days with these people because they're all doing it for their charity or whatever. And it's not really about the mates having holiday. So get to the airport, get to Heathrow. I was shitting myself a bit. I was properly in that, what have I done? What have I done? I spot this woman in the toilets and I thought, I bet she's going on this. She had walking boots, but she also had false nails and eyelashes on. I thought, oh, I hope she is, because I'm quite into her. And it turned out she was. Anyway, me and her sat down and had a drink. I hadn't had a drink for months and months and months, and it was still in my drinking years. And she was at the same kind of nuts phase that I was, that was, oh, what have I done? What have I done? So we accidentally, before we got on the fucking plane, polished off 2 bottles of rosé. But as it turned out, she was going with her best mate and they'd had a massive almighty fallout. They were like women in the 50s, super duper glamorous. She was married to somebody very famous and her friend was married to a plastic surgeon. It was them types. And they'd had a huge falling out. Somebody had been unfaithful to somebody and I don't know what was going on. But they'd both assumed that the other one wouldn't turn up. And then we got to the bit where you give your passports in and the other one turned up. But because I'd accidentally got drunk with this woman, I was on her team. You know, there was like 12 people doing this trek, all strangers, and instantly we all separated to 2 teams. Because of these 2 women who'd fallen out. There was nothing to do with any of us. We'd just met.
And you went, yeah, bitch.
Yeah, what a bitch. So before any walking had got done, there'd already been drama. So kind of the walking bit, although it was pretty full on, you know, I was drinking 12 litres of water a day and still feeling thirsty. It was that mental. The drama was the thing that I remember of it. And these 2 warring factions.
Did that take your mind off the fact that your shoes were 2 sizes too small?
They were really, really rubbing. And I was getting blisters that were like the size of tea plates. Oh. There was a doctor with us and the person who was leading it was like ex-special forces. You know, they knew what they were doing. And, you know, because we were camping in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
Just like 7 or 8 hours drive from the nearest road. Yeah, so I was thinking, right, I'll put up with these. I'm not going to give in. This was about like 4 days in. On the 5th day we were walking through, because it's all different sorts of terrains. One day it's sand dunes, which are a fucking nightmare. They look beautiful, but walking sand dunes is like going up a down escalator. Oh, God, it was awful. I thought I was going to die going up the sand dunes. Properly did. And there was this woman, another woman who was talking to her, and I was thinking, shut up! Stop talking to me! I actually thought about hitting them with my walking stick thing. You know, your walking sticks with the points in the end, what you jam in the ground. But on this particular day, we were walking through this terrain, and it looked like how you'd imagine Mars to look. Everything was red. There was rocks everywhere. There was spiky bits. And every so often there was like a little spiky bush had come up from the floor somewhere. You know, like those trees that you see in where there's kits of wildlife things with elephants and stuff like that wandering through, and there's always these little trees. Those trees that have a specific look to them. Yeah. Anyway, the leaves on those trees are like razor blades. Properly are. It's like, how does anything possibly live in the desert? This is bonkers. Even the trees are out to get you. As we were walking, there was this shooting pain up through my foot, and my first thought was, some creature is in my boot and has hurt me. And I just stood there with my leg in the air and went, something's happened, because I didn't know what was going on. And so the doctor came legging it over and lifted my foot up, and I trod on one of these acacia bush things, and they're so sharp it had sliced through the bottom of my boot and up into my foot. So there was blood coming out of my foot, and we were still like about another 20 miles to the next camp, and so they had to get the medic, and I had to go in the car because it had just sliced my foot open. And there was a car. There was one that hovers about 20 miles away just in case. Otherwise I'd be on back of a camel, because we had camels with us carrying water.
Yeah, I had vision of you on a camel, or just being like pulled along through the sand.
Yeah, so I've dived straight into it. That's my most extreme exercise. But let's go right back, Sarah. Were you good at exercising at school?
I wasn't bad, but I hated PE at school. Primary school, I just blithered around talking while it was my turn to play rounders. When I got to secondary school, we were set in sets, and there was a boys group, a girls group, and a mixed group. And I was in the mixed group, and the mixed group were all shit at PE. And I do remember being locked on the tennis courts, and the boys group and the girls group being coached for some sort of, team spirit greatness. My school had a farm, and there were pigs next to the tennis court. So we used to just like scratch the pigs, because it actually wasn't that terrible. I just hated it. I hated getting changed. Everybody could see what stage everybody's boobs were. You had to have a shower. I did music CSE because you didn't have to do PE at school. But they used to have this game at the end of term, which was supposed to be a treat, called Pirates. And what it was is they put all the gym equipment out, like the vaulting horse and the ropes, and you just ran round, and some people had to catch other people. And it was like my idea of hell. It just made me physically ill. Team games were a nightmare. I was always the goalie. I was always standing with my back to wherever the action was, like talking to somebody. I can remember her shouting, "Sarah, let you stop talking, you're in goal, you're in goal!" Just didn't ignore her. Oh, what now?
That's really funny. What now?
Or the other thing, which I thought was brilliant and everybody else hated. Do you remember Dan Maskell?
No.
Dan Maskell was a commentator at Wimbledon. And I used to, when we were playing tennis, I used to be Dan Maskell, go, Ledger's coming in for serve. She's looking good this season. She's looking good. And we can see she's bounced the ball twice. She's dropped it. But she's paying attention. And Gather Coles at the other end of the net, she's raring to go. And I would just do the commentary because I thought that was hilarious. Everybody else hated it because they actually wanted to play tennis. Ledger says she's not on form today. She's not on form. Seems a little distracted. Sometimes she lacks concentration. It's what lets her down. Everybody else will be like, fuck off and play somewhere else. No. Right, you can be the ball girl, Sarah. And then me and my friend, we devised rules for fat tennis, where you get 1 point when you serve the ball, you hit it, you get 1 point. You get 1 point if you get it over the net, and you get 1,000,000 points if you return it over the net again. And that was our rules for fat tennis. We never got beyond 3. We spent all our time looking for the ball. Like, you'd hit the ball and then it would just go. That's why they have millions of balls at Wimbledon. You have millions. They don't just have one tennis ball. If you just got one tennis ball, it's a complete and utter nightmare because the ball just goes somewhere and you're fucked. But any game like that. I mean, we used to play cricket on our lawn. My dad taught us how to play cricket, and I quite enjoyed that. But most of the time we spent like the ball would be on a ditch, or would go over the fence and be in the road, or it'd be in next door's garden. You'd spend, 3/4 of your time would be looking for the ball. That's the trick with professional ball sports.
Is this why we aren't Olympians, Sarah? Not enough balls?
Yes.
But what about swimming? Because I know that you're a marvellous swimmer, really long distances and all sorts, and you love it.
I do. I'm a very good swimmer. Flat floats, though. I've always been a good swimmer. But swimming was never something we did at school. My dad taught me to swim. I could swim probably age of 3 or 4. I taught my kids to swim. Both my kids could swim before they could walk, I have to say. And we always used to amuse people by throwing Jessie into the water when she was a baby. Like, whoa, throw the baby into the water. Whoa, look, she's swimming to the side. Oh, it was a trick.
And nobody called social services.
So my dad taught me to swim, and swimming was something I did just myself. I've got to tell you this one. The first time I did the swimathon was in the sort of late 80s, and that's a 5-kilometre swim. And before that, I never was in part of a club, but I'd swum distance to sort of amuse myself. In my 20s, I did the first swimathon because I wanted a medal. And at the time, I was going out with a man who was later to become my husband and then was subsequently to become my ex-husband. And I said I needed someone to do my lengths for me. And he refused to come and count my lengths in case I embarrassed him by drowning halfway through this 5-kilometre swim. He wasn't worried that I would hurt myself or die. He was worried that he would be embarrassed by my untimely and obvious death in the middle of the pool.
And reader, she married him.
So I did 5-kilometre swim, and that was fine. And then the following year, my husband, who was my husband by this time, he agreed he would count my lengths. And he got a T-shirt for that. I got a medal. He got a T-shirt that said Swimathon 5 kilometres. And he used to wear it everywhere. And people would come up to him and go, oh, you must be very fit to be able to swim 5 kilometres. And what kind of lunatic goes, no, I swam. Look, here's my medal. I didn't get it. I did the swimming. He did the counting. You have to be a maniac to do that. But he used to absolutely incense me. And I'm sure he did it to annoy me, because women would come up and sort of finger the writing on the chest. Oh, 5 kilometres. That's marvellous. And this fat bird standing next to it going, no, me, I did it. I looked delusional because I had actually done it. But you can't take your medal anywhere, can you?
Have it in your handbag just in case.
I'm sure he did it to annoy me. Although I don't really think he ever put that much thought into anything that had anything to do with me. I'd be quite flattered if he'd done it to annoy me.
Do you swim outside? I'd love to swim outside. It's one I'd love to, but I'm just nervous that, in any bodies of water, there's either sharks or poos or dead bodies.
I did do an outdoor swim, and it was when I was at my fattest, and we had to wear a wetsuit. I had to be measured for it. And the measurements were just so horrifically embarrassing, because like a normal sized person, an average sized person can go and buy a wetsuit relatively cheaply. I practically had to take out a mortgage to get this bespoke wetsuit made. And I was fully expecting the wetsuit people to ring me up and say, look, we've got the measurements for most of your horse, but not the 2 front legs. Because it was just so enormous. And
now I'm just thinking about a horse in a wetsuit, Sarah, and what other animals would be in wetsuits and would be fabulous.
I was 28 stone at the time. And I remember my friend had to come round and help me put the wetsuit on. My son said, it's a shame we're not Amish. We could have asked the whole village. And then I did this outdoor swim, but I was shit at it because I'd never really properly swum with this massive wetsuit on. So I finished the swim, but I was last. I'd like to try another one. I've done a couple of swims in lakes, but like you, I do think, there might be something that I could get caught in and dragged down or just...
Well, you see, I don't worry about that, being caught in something. I'd just assume that a body is going to float up past me.
Yes. I think you've watched a lot of... What's it called? Scandinavia.
Yeah, you can't move in Scandinavian lakes for bodies popping around.
I like swimming in the sea. I'd like to do another outdoor swim in a more manageable wetsuit or without a wetsuit, whatever. But I've been back to a mile again. That's quite nice. I enjoy that. I'm very hot when I get out. I'm like, you can feel like the calories. I do think I should get out and just be thin. Woo! I will tell you the worst thing about swimming, and that is other people. Anyone that lane swims will tell you. I'm slow to medium, but there are some really slow people that like swim together, like talking with their glasses on and their mascara on and their hair all whatever, and they just talk to each other, and that drives me insane. But then fast people that like aggressively swim past you and like there's this backwash that goes over you, like, oh, and then the ones that fucking hell, the ones that tumble turn at the end, I'm like, fuck you, mate, I can tumble turn too, and it's not pretty. So, and I do occasionally just ha ha ha, you didn't see that coming, did you?
Oh, Sarah, it's bringing it all out, isn't it? This.
I get absolute lane rage.
I'd like to be good at swimming long distances, but after I've done about 3 lengths, I feel like all my limbs are going to drop off and I'm bored to tears. I can't ever get to that place where it's like meditative.
It is boring, and you have got to switch your head off, because I do it by counting. So I'm like, 1 length, 1 length, 1 length, 1 length. That's all I do.
But to keep on going those long distances, you must get to a place where you're properly getting something out of the action of doing it.
Oh yeah, totally. Like when you're really in your stride, it's like flying. It's lovely. Absolutely love it.
Oh, I'd love to be like that.
And the water has to be cold as well.
Water has to be cold.
Because you sweat, but you don't feel it. And you get dehydrated very quickly if the water's hot. So like a nice cold, empty pool with no twats in it.
I can sometimes get that meditative feel, that kind of, almost like mindfulness business with walking, but I have to get past the point where I'm really, really unfit. So I've done lots of marathons and half marathons, and I've done a few running ones. Hated every second. Even when I was like at my fittest, I never got to that point where people say, oh, and it just clears your mind. And I'm just running like, I fucking hate this. I could be at home watching telly. Why am I doing this? With every step. Once I get into it, of doing, 5-6 miles, I know that mentally something really good is happening to me, as well as physically. And that's kind of when I'm preparing for like big walks, if I'm doing a half marathon or some sort of adventure thing, which I've not done anything for ages. I do quite like it, and I do quite feel like especially if I've done a really long one, a 15 or a 20 miles when I'm training for something, that feels like a real achievement on that day. And you see, I only will do that sort of stuff if I'm training for, if there's a medal or a round of applause at the end of it at some point, then I'll do it. If it's just because this makes you fit and strong and healthy and it's good for your brain, no, not interested. And no, I need my medal, otherwise you're all right, thanks.
I couldn't ever do anything like a half marathon or even the thought of it, But I did do Couch to 5K when it was one of my 50 before 50 things to do, was to do a 5K challenge. And the first thing I did, it was a walk. It was one of the Run for Life ones, and there was a whole group of us, and we all met up together. My friend said, my mate here has just had a hip replacement, we're going to all push her together in the wheelchair, we'll take it in turns, is that okay? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I started the pushing, this lady, and everybody else just disappeared. She was very light. I kind of felt sorry for her. But if you've ever pushed a wheelchair over grass, and I know why she did it, and I totally understand, and I applaud her and everything, but the last sort of 100 meters, after I'd pushed her for 5 kilometers, she stood up and walked the last bit, because she could walk, she just couldn't walk 5 kilometers, and everybody gave her a round of applause.
Oh, for fuck's sake. And you didn't get,
fucking hip replacement. I know. And I was appalled. And then after that, I did start to do 5 kilo. But then, what was it Jessie said it was? It was shuffling. It was bustling that I was doing. I once went out with her to run I used to run out on Bruff Marsh. And
this is your daughter, Jessie?
Yeah, my daughter, Jessie. And I went out. She disappeared like in Star Wars when they go into warp speed. She just disappeared. She was running with me, disappeared. I'd done about, I don't know, probably about 600 meters. And by the time I'd done that, she'd come back. She'd run the full 5. Then Tom my son was a bit more forgiving with me. He came out and I was running along as fast as I could. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, this is it. And I looked to the side and he was with me. And I thought, I'm keeping up with Tom. And then I realized he was walking, texting and eating a double-decker. And then everything went wrong. I broke my toe. And then, oh my God, I fell over in the park and twisted my ankle. And I fell into this. There'd just been a flood in Carlisle and there were the kind of mud piles everywhere. And I fell over right into this pile of mud, 5 a.m, because I was running early in the morning. And when I got up, my tits had made 2 hollows in the, in the ground. And then they kind of filled up with water. And I thought, I was very fascinated by that. I was so fascinated by that, I was able to get home, and then I couldn't go to work because I'd done something so my ankle swelled up like a turnip, but I couldn't drive or anything. And then for all sorts of reasons, knee problems and whatever, I've never really, I would love to be able to do it again, because I did enjoy it, but I could never do longer than 5 kilometers was my absolute limit.
I mean, what you're talking about with your Jessie running off, just disappearing, I've had that, but in an actual marathon. Yeah, and as it happened, it was in Carlisle, but our Tom was about 18 months old by then, so what is it, about 16 years ago? And I'd had quite a difficult birth with our Tom, and I needed something to kind of, to myself, to make me think, oh, well, look, my body does work. If I put lots of effort in, I can go a really long way. There are, even though it didn't really work well with being pregnant and giving birth and all of that sort of business, it can do other things. So I put loads of effort into the training, and I'd already done a moonwalk half marathon by then, so which was, you know, a walking one, which is so supportive. It's just lovely. No woman left behind.
Is that the one with the bras?
Yeah, where you're all in bras marching through London during the middle of the night. It's brilliant. So I thought, well, you know, I'll put the training in. I can do a bit more athletic one. I rung them and I said, you know, people do walk this, don't they? And they went, yes, of course they do, people walk. It's not all, you know, professional runners and that sort of thing. I thought, oh, fair enough. So we drove up to Carlisle, stayed in Travelodge, got down to the leisure centre. The running track was where everybody started, and there were 1,300 people did it. And I was on that running track expecting there to be lots of people who looked a bit like me. You know, I was maybe about 15, 16 stone at that point. But I knew I'd put the hours in training, so I thought I'd be right. Looked around and there were actual elite runners that had come in from all sorts of other countries. And there was people in all the proper get-up. And it was clearly everybody was a proper runner. And I just thought, oh, fuck, what am I going to do? Starting gun went and everybody ran. I thought, where are you going? Stop it. No, let's just have a nice leisurely walk. We can do it. We don't need to run. And everybody ran. And it was one of those snap decisions. I thought, do I pretend I'm poorly and just faint or something? Or do I just walk, stick 2 fingers up to everybody else? And I thought, no, I'm going to run around there. I'm going to run around the track and I'm going to run past the well-wishers. And as soon as I'm out of the way of the well-wishers, I will walk. And so that's what I did. But by the time I'd run around the track, I was absolutely, you know, I could barely manage. So I got out of the way of them and set off walking. And, you know, 2 or 3 miles in, there were people behind me. Not many, but there was some elderly folk and, you know, people dressed in astronauts' costume weighing about 15 stone on itself. And as I got further and further and further, I realised there was maybe 3 people behind me. And at that point, I thought, shall I use the £5 that I've secreted in my trainer and get a taxi? And I had to talk myself out of that, which I did. But anyway, I got there, I got to the end, and as I was coming towards, you know, I'd passed mile 13, and it was only 0.1 miles to go, and I looked and there was nobody behind me. I was the very last person, and all those people who were behind me, the 85-year-olds, had died. They had got a taxi, and all, you know, the people in the squirrel costumes, because they were promoting testicular cancer or whatever. I don't know what the correlation is, but anyway. Nuts, yeah. They disappeared as well. So I was the very last, and they were deflating the inflatable finish line. St John's ambulance were packing up. You know, woman in T-van, she were packing up. But they saw me marching with such purpose that they kind of made a little crowd for me at the finish line for me to march through. And then when I marched through, they all gave me a big round of applause. And I thought, yeah, I'm the greatest. And I would, if you'd have told me that before, I'd have thought I would be mortified. I'd be so upset, I'd be so embarrassed. And I wasn't. I just thought, I've done this and I've had the bollocks to come last and know that I've come last. And I wasn't like 3 weeks walking. I was only sort of like, you know, 2 hours 40 or something.
Bloody hell, that's amazing.
Well, it clearly wasn't that amazing because everybody else had done it in a lot less time.
Because I did one of those moonwalks and it took me all bloody night because I came in last for that one. And at the end, there were people like limping along. There was a woman who bled right through her trainers.
Oh.
And there were taxis like circling them, like the lion circling the wildebeest. I put my head down on a wall and cried. There was a 26-mile thing that other people were coming in ahead of me for it. And they went, oh, and Sarah Ledger is very... They announced it because I had my number on and whatever. And I went, oh, yeah, I stopped for chips. And everybody laughed. And then I thought I shouldn't have said that. And then I couldn't be asked to go and get my medal because I had to walk another 10 steps. I've done my walking. But I'll tell you what happened on that day. And I've often thought this about my metabolism. So I'd done a 10-mile walk with my dad the week before and that had gone fine, but I'd got sunburned. And I was really badly sunburned when I did this walk. And it started to peel. And afterwards, when I went back to the hotel, I went for a sleep. And when I woke up, all my sunburn had just come off. It was like it was all shed in this bed, like a snake.
Like an iPhone case, but for you.
Yes, I think I should walk 13 miles a day or swim, 5 miles a day or something, because I think that's what my body is made for. My Auntie Lynn lives in the northeast of Scotland, and she's got lots of friends who are from fishing families. And the idea in the sort of 19th century was that if you were a fisherman, you needed to marry a big, strong, buxom woman that was strong enough to carry you to your fishing boat through the sea and not get any of your gear wet and put you on your boat. That was what you... And I always think that's what I'm built for. It's not that I don't exercise. I don't exercise enough. What I'm really made for is...
Carrying a little fisherman above your head.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm working on that. Yes, I'm built for very hard labour. So I'm doing weights at the moment, lifting weights, or as my daughter says, putting your bra on. So I'm aiming for a 100-kilo deadlift at the moment. 70 is the biggest I've lifted.
That's like a person, isn't it?
10 stone, yeah.
Well, that's like a couple of very little fishermen, isn't it?
Well, I know. But over my head, so a shoulder press, a seated shoulder press, I'm up to 42 kilos, and that's 6.5 stone. Yeah, my son lifts weights. My son, he's a bit scathing when I tell him 42. He's like, that's what he warms up on. But then he's massive. He's built like, what was it you called him? Thor.
Yeah, he is, isn't he?
But then when I told him about my shoulder press, he was quite impressed with that. And he said, it's surprising because to look at you, you just hobble about. You look like you can't do anything. He says, it's like that point in Star Wars where they see Yoda fight for the first time.
I've got really strong legs. My shape is like Mr. Happy. I'm kind of circular with a couple of like little legs dangling out the bottom, but they're really, really strong, which is why I can do these really long distances. My top half, no, I could lift like a couple of pot noodles and I'd need to have a lie down. And I wish I was. I'd love to be one of those, one of those ladies where you can see the muscle lines in their arms. I'm thinking of a Michelle Obama type situation where she has these long, lean muscles, but she's super strong. I'd just physically like to be really, really strong, but I just know that my top half isn't made for it. My bottom half, yes.
You put my top half with your bottom half.
Oh, we'd be Wonder Woman.
We could be doing something interesting, couldn't we?
We'd conquer the world, Sarah. Or certainly walk and swim it. Of course, you know that I am an actual trained exercise teacher.
Now, you have told me this, and I didn't want to get into any sort of embarrassing situations by questioning you about it, but maybe...
You're lying!
But maybe, where did you get this qualification from, Sarah?
I got it from the YMCA. I had to do, 6-week course sort of thing. When I finished drama school, between then and getting work and in between acting work, I needed another gig. At drama school, I was doing musical theatre and we did loads and loads of dancing, 4-6 hours of dancing every day. That I thought, oh, well, I'm halfway there, aren't I, with getting a qualification to be able to teach aerobics and that kind of business. So that's what I did. I didn't really use it until later on, when I started up my own little classes near where I live, and I taught old people, and we had the best time. We did a little bit of shuffling around, then we had a cup of tea and biscuits. I was never cut out to be Jane Fonda, but we did have a laugh, and they all came to my wedding. My whole group came to my wedding. Oh, at that point as well, I was in a belly dancing club. I was learning belly dancing. That was brilliant. And they all came to my wedding as well, and they'd planned a thing at the do afterwards, and they sat me on a chair and they did this big routine all around me, jiggling all about. It was brilliant. But yeah, I still, in my Friday group that I teach, I work with adults with learning difficulties and disabilities, and we do lots of dancing and singing in that group. So I still have my hand in.
As the gynecologist said.
Yeah, yeah. So I do still do a little bit of jumping around and dancing and that with that group, and they're just wonderful. There's no sort of fear, and so we can do really exciting stuff. Because as soon as we're in that room together, we're all really unself-conscious and we have a wonderful time.
Whenever the thing is the new thing, have you just gone and done it? Have you done like yoga and Pilates and all of that stuff?
Yes, I'd love to be good at that as well. I'm not. I'm really flexible, but I'm not strong enough. And I'd love to be one of those people who gets super duper into it and they get a mat out in the sunshine outside and go and stand on their head at daybreak, but can't be arsed. And yoga does appeal to me because there's a lot of breathing
Yeah,
and there's a lot of sitting still,
quite a lot of lying down.
a lot of lying down, but also a lot of stretching, and I do like a stretch.
Yeah, there is that. I can remember going to Pilates. I remember my dad wanting to come to my Pilates class. Charming gentleman though he was, yeah, I couldn't face the thought of my dad accidentally farting next to me in a, in a Pilates class when everybody was really very lacquered and manicured and whatever. And it was bad enough for me going looking like Stig of the Dump.
I did Pilates for a bit and I did enjoy it, but it was one of those things where while I was doing it, I'd think, well, what the fuck's this for? Yes, I can lift my bum up a little bit and I can count down and I can do that slapping on the floor. And then every single time when I'd stand up at the end, I'd be like, oh, and nearly go over. Because it turned out that something had gone on and it was quite deep and. And I kind of didn't like that at the end I'd lost control. But if I am going to lose control of all of my bodily functions, or even the way that my body works at all, I want to know I'm doing it. I want to have walked a really long way, or swam away, or done something to make me know that I'd exercised. Not lying on the floor, clenching my tummy and, pulling the elevator all the way up to the top. Did they tell you about that?
Yes. They've got a whole load of sort of extended metaphors, haven't they?
Yeah. That's pulling. All of these were on about is pulling your fanny muscles up. So the elevator goes all the way to the top, all the way to the top floor, and that just means one of them.
Do you remember after you gave birth? Did you have a whole sort of postnatal thing where you had to do your pelvic floor exercises?
I had an emergency cesarean, didn't I? So it was all a bit different, and things went a bit wrong. So I was in hospital for a week, 10 days.
Well, I can remember they used to say, do it every time you're at the traffic lights. And I quite often look at traffic lights and I look to see if women's eyes are glazed over while they're doing the pelvic floor exercise. Like, 1, 2, 3.
Hey, do you see those adverts in the back of magazines sometimes where it's on about Kegel exercises and it's it's like a stapler that you shove up your fanny and then you have to do staples. Yeah. We haven't actually, nobody's employing people in offices to to staple up documents with it, but they do look like staplers.
Yes, or you get a thing with balls in it and you've got to grip them in and run up the stairs with them or something, and if they fall out, it's great.
Throw them and catch them with your fanny.
Yeah.
Pick up a table and drag it round with your fanny.
And then...
Yeah. Throw and catch a fridge with your fanny. Taking it too far again. Sorry. I'll tell you what, you and me, because we've had this conversation before, have in common that we go through phases of being absolutely dedicated to exercise, and then we miss one session or miss one thing, and then it drops off completely. And then 6 months later, a year later, 10 years later, we start again.
My son says you're very good to me, not to you. He says, Sarah, you are very good at doing something for 2 weeks. I'm like becoming getting the running shoes, reading the book, doing the running blog, and then fall over in the mud, dent it with your tits and never do it ever again. Yeah.
Boxing. I've done boxing. Oh. And I told you that my arms are like blooming sparrow's kneecaps, my muscles on my arms. So I was even a rubbish boxer. And do you know what I didn't like? Because it was at the leisure centre that they give you boxing gloves, and the boxing gloves always smelt a bit sour and sweaty. Nasty. I thought, I'm not sure the fitness that I'm getting is worth the fungal infection I'm getting by putting my hands up these. Yeah, boxing, Pilates, yoga, ballet. I did ballet fitness, quite like that, but it was too much comedy for me. I just knew that I looked like Dawn French in all of her ballet, Darcy Bus Stop. Good toes, naughty toes. I looked like that. I couldn't take myself seriously doing it.
So at the moment, what's your? Because you went spinning, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing, right? I'd never done a spin class, and then I joined the local leisure centre, and it's really, really good. And they have loads of classes, and I really, really like it. And I've dropped off from doing it recently, but I was trying to do 2 or 3 classes a week because I do like a group exercise. I do like it when there's lots of people, not competitive, but or not teamwork, but everybody doing something in a group. And I thought, I'll try spin. So that's like exercise bikes, isn't it? My first go, oh my God, that saddle. I thought, what is meant to happen here? What am I doing wrong? You know, you're in the dark and there's flashing lights and there's somebody shouting at you to, pedal at the front. And it is super competitive because they have like a big screen. All your bikes are linked up to this big screen, so they know how fast you're going, how many calories you've used. They do like a table of best to worst, and everybody's trying to get a bit further up the league. I thought, I'm not doing that. My goal is to stay to the end of this class and not just walk out and tell everybody to fuck off. That is my fitness goal for this class. The first one, I left and I thought, I have broken my undercarriage. My nethers are just hanging. So I did a little bit of asking around and everybody went, oh no, you need to pad yourself down there, otherwise you've no chance. So I let myself heal for a bit and I went back a few weeks later and I wore the cheapest sanitary towels of all time. And so I'd had all them tucked all around my gusset. And it wasn't as bad. And I could get quite involved in the whole sweatiness of it. And so that second time, I didn't have a throbbing gusset anymore. So that was a thumbs up. And I'd still kind of completely rejected any sort of idea of competition. And nobody's looking at anybody else. Everybody's just thinking about themselves in that sort of scenario. So I didn't care what I looked like. I didn't care that I was last. Because nobody else was caring. They're just caring about themselves. And it's very freeing to have that as an idea, that nobody gives a shit. Everybody's just concentrating on themselves. And I hated every single second of it. But when I finished, I felt wonderful. And I continued to feel wonderful for about 24 hours in a way that I haven't really experienced with any other sport. And I did it a few more times, and then I can't remember, something happened and I couldn't go and I lost interest and I didn't go back. But every single time I hated the experience of it. That 45 minutes felt like about 3 months. And afterwards, I just felt a little bit kind of light version of euphoric. And I don't know if it's because I haven't done something where my heart rate is really high and has stayed really high for an amount of time.
Yeah.
But it certainly did something to me. And now I'm talking about it, I think, I should go back because, as long as I pad my flaps, I'll be fine. Tell you what, though, I'm still mad for an aerobics class all these years on. I do like an aerobics class.
Grapevine to the left.
I catch sight of myself in the mirror and in my head I'm Britney. I start doing like a little head flick and a little upwards nod at myself in the mirrors when I'm dancing. And all of a sudden, that's it. I'm a little bit Beyonce.
I remember raising quite a crowd when I did trampolining when I think I was in the 5th year. So I was about 15, 16. And my tits must have been walloping about like... I do remember people thinking, people are looking quite admiringly. I must be doing a very good job of this. All the boys have come in to watch.
And your knockers were doing their own show. Chebtastic.
Chebtastic on the trampoline. Big round of applause for Sarah when she dismounts. Well done.
That's the other thing, sports bras. If I'm doing something where I know there's going to be moving about involved, I sometimes wear 2 sports bras.
Oh, well, I have been doing a tricky manoeuvre at the gym and my tits have fallen right out. Now, there was one time I was swimming along and my uncle, he was driving along the motorway and he saw a car wheel come off. He saw a car wheel just on its own ahead of him. And he was like, ha, somebody's lost a car wheel. But it was his. And because of the momentum, it had gone ahead of him. I was like that. I suddenly looked down and there was a tit like floating along next to me. And it was mine. It had popped out. I was like, oh, just shut it back in again. In you go. Come on, girl.
And I think, ladies and gentlemen, on that one, I think we've covered it all. Or in Sarah's case, uncovered it all. This has been Cecil and Simons, the 2 Sarahs, middle-aged fat lasses, and this week we've been talking about exercise. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Middle-Aged Fat Lasses podcast. Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss an episode. And to find out more, visit middleagedfatlass.com.